Somewhere in the vast tangled corridors of the modern pop culture, The Last of Us resides. A familiar name, an echo of a world ravaged by cordyceps and sorrow, whether in the form of a video game, a TV series, or a whispered conversation in a dimly lit cafes. It's a story that has etched itself into the collective consciousness. But you, yes, you there in the back, have you heard of it? Truly, no? A rare specimen indeed. But fret not, today is not the day for history lessons. If curiosity strikes, the internet, as always, is abundant with knowledge. Instead, today we concern ourselves with something quite different, but unmistakably familiar. The Last of Us Escape the Dark. This game, designed by Alex Crispin, Thomas Pike and James Shelton, and published by Denver Unlimited, is not merely The Last of Us transposed onto a tabletop. It's a different creature entirely, one shrouded in atmosphere, tension, and a heavy dose of melancholy. But does it deserve a place in your collection? Should you gather your companions, light a candle, for ambience of course, and immerse yourself into its brooding world? Let's find out. Upon first encountering the box, a flood of questions may spring to mind. Was this printed on a receipt machine? Are there crayons included in the box? Is this a silent film adaptation? The answer to all of the above is quite simply no. What you're looking at is Escape the Dark, a system known for its stark monochrome aesthetics and unforgiving cooperative gameplay. First introduced in Escape the Dark Castle and later refined in Escape the Dark Sector, the system places players in dark, chapter-driven adventure. Together, they must navigate a gauntlet of dilemmas, hardships, and increasingly grim obstacles. Survival is the goal. Reaching the end only means confronting a final, harrowing boss battle. And in case it wasn't clear, everything is in black and white. Everything. But enough about the system, let's step inside the game itself. In The Last of Us Escape the Dark, you, alongside up to 4 of your dearest friends or most patient relatives, must reach Jacksonville alive and well, all within a strict time limit. Upon arrival, your final task is simple: to physically and decisively eliminate the game's ultimate villain. From this description, two things become abundantly clear. First, this is a cooperative game. Victory is collective. Defeat is equally shared. If one of you falls, the entire team fails. Second, there will be walking. There will be deadlines. There will be urgency. There will be tense discussions. Some strategic, some bordering on frantic bickering. Magnificent. Each player selects a character to represent them in this paper-crafted, starkly illustrated world. Weapons are distributed, and then, with little more than a deep breath, the journey to Jacksonville begins. All players begin their weary pilgrimage in the quarantine zone, a place that offers no comfort, only a brief moment of quiet before the long and perilous road ahead. Their destination? Jacksonville, on the far, far away opposite side of the board. Between here and there lie 5 treacherous regions, each thick with danger, despair, and the distant echo of something that once resembled civilization. And here, right at the outset, comes the first truly interesting moment. Though you are all part of the same team, bound by a common goal, you are not bound by the same path. This is not a journey taken shoulder to shoulder. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. Right from the start, players are given a choice: leave the quarantine zone by heading east or west. A seemingly small decision, yet one that could change everything. Will the group stay together, clinging to the fragile comfort of numbers? Or will they split immediately, scattering into the unknown, like travelers with vastly different philosophies on how to survive an apocalypse? And here's the twist: this isn't a one-time decision. The path continues to branch as the game progresses. Though the game consists of 5 total regions, each player will mostly visit only 3 of them. The road diverges, and the moment of separation, whether it happens in the first few steps or much later, is always looming. If the group divides early, some will see one part of the world, while others will experience something totally different. Their stories will be shaped by where they walk, what they encounter, or whether they ever find their way back to each other. A fascinating dilemma, a terrible idea, a necessary risk. Choose wisely, or don't. Either way, the road ahead is waiting. And when I say that the freedom of choice persists throughout the entire game, I mean exactly that. At any moment, you can simply declare, I need some time alone. Abandon your teammates and stride off into the unknown like a lone wanderer in a black and white film. More than just an act of defiance, this decision sometimes may even prove beneficial. Yes, you are a team, yes, you are working together, but no, you are not obligated to move as a one single unit. In fact, there are many moments where doing so is outright ill-advised. Here's how it works. Upon arriving at a new location, players are presented with two main choices. They can A. Camp, a serene, if slightly melancholic option, which usually lets for rest and recovery. And B. Explore, a bold and perhaps reckless decision that almost certainly leads to an event. More often than not, that event is combat. Here's where it gets interesting. Each player makes this choice individually. Once decisions are locked in, those who want to explore set off into the dark, while those who prefer self-preservation remain behind, wrapped in the fleeting comfort of a self-improvised campsite. A practical example. Say you've just survived a particularly brutal encounter. Your body is battered, your morale is questionable, and the thought of yet another fight feels almost insulting. No problem. While the others charge ahead, you simply lie down, close your eyes, and enjoy a restorative nap. On the other hand, perhaps you're feeling unreasonably confident. Maybe you venture out alone, scavenging for supplies. A risky endeavor, certainly. The odds of being heavily beaten are high, but whatever treasures you uncover, those belong to you alone. There's one more consideration. Enemy health scales based on the number of players in the combat. A larger party faces stronger foe. A solo adventurer, by contrast, encounters an opponent that is a touch more manageable. Whether that makes survival more likely or merely extends the inevitable, that depends on your skill, your luck, and your capacity for regret. It's a balancing act, a paradox, a delicate game of risk and restraint. And whether you play it alone or together is entirely up to you. And when I say whatever you find is yours, I don't mean it in a sentimental keepsake kind. I mean it in the strictly practical, life or death, you will need this or you will regret every decision you've ever made kind of way. Because while your primary objective is to reach Jacksonville, it will be a grave mistake to assume that reaching it means winning the game. Doesn't mean that. There will be no red carpet unfurling at your feet. No triumphant brass section heralding your arrival. No celebratory feast. There will be a fight. And not just any fight, a final battle, far more merciless than anything that came before it. A confrontation designed to punish the unprepared, humiliate the reckless, and remind you that optimism is, at best, a cruel joke, which is why you must arrive prepared. This means a weapon, not optional, ammunition for said weapon, also not optional. Enough health to withstand a few desperate swings. Food for when your health inevitably runs low. Perhaps a special skill, something that might, if the stars align, give you the faintest edge in battle. You see, I've been here before. I have fought my way through all the brutal, unforgiving regions. I have scavenged, struggled, begged, survived, only to reach Jacksonville with barely 2 bits of health left and a sense of impending doom so strong it could have been its own character. 2 rounds into the final fight and it's over for me. Not once, not twice, more like thrice. And yet, strangely, this is where the game shines. It's brutal, yes, it's unfair, yes, but it demands your full attention. It rewards ingenuity. Every item matters. Every fight must be won as efficiently as possible. Every decision must be made with the future, not just the present, in mind. Because surviving is not enough, you must arrive ready. For me personally, The Last of Us Escape the Dark captures something remarkably close to what The Last of Us represents, both as a video game and as a TV series. Not in its mechanics necessarily, but in its atmosphere. Every item matters, even trash, especially trash. And make no mistake, most of the items you'll find are trash. An entire deck of garbage, but important garbage. Stray bits of tape, empty cans, scraps of metal that had a purpose long before the world fell apart. It mirrors the original game almost too well. If anything, it's slightly more depressing when you really think about it. Digging through junk, sleeping in the ruins of what used to be homes, shops, lives. Look, I'm not saying this game is a homeless survival simulator, but I'm also not saying it isn't. Beyond that, you and your teammates are not hunters. You are not apex predators stalking the land with unlimited resources and thirst for action. Yes, you'll probably defeat the next wave of bandits or infected that cross your path, but the real question is, at what cost? Even the smallest injury could mean you won't heal in time for the final battle. And that's where things get interesting. The game presents you with choices, temptations, Dilemmas that quietly whisper, "Are you sure?" There's a mechanic that lets you glimpse a valuable item even before you uncover the challenge that you need to overcome to reach it. It could be a powerful weapon, it could be a first aid kit, it could be exactly what you need. But before you get to it, there could be a horde of infected. There could be a pack of ruthless survivors. There could be a clicker waiting patiently in the dark. So you ask yourself, is it worth it? And you ask yourself that question a lot. So let's talk about combat. Combat is at the very least half the game, possibly more, depending on your luck, or lack thereof. As you journey through this bleak, infected world, you will frequently stumble upon events. Mysterious, ominous, often regrettable. These events remain hidden from you and your team until you trigger them. Occasionally they require a decision, one that undoubtedly have consequences. But more often than not, it's a fight. A rough, unforgiving, dice-fueled fight. The system is deceptively simple. Every enemy has a certain amount of health represented by dice, each displaying various symbols. Each round, players roll their own dice, hoping to land a symbol that matches one of those on the enemy's health dice. For every successful match, the corresponding enemy's health die is removed. When all of the enemy's health dice are gone, the battle is over, the victory is yours. Simple, elegant, brutal. Of course, that's the generalized version. The real game is full of modifiers, special abilities, and opportunities to turn the odds in your favor. You might gain ways to modify your roll, because fate is fickle. Remove multiple enemy dice at once, always a blessing. Change the enemy's dice symbols to something more convenient for you, a rare but deeply satisfying trick. After all of the players have rolled their dice, it's the enemy's turn. And here's where things get particularly unfair. Enemies don't roll dice. Mostly. They do not rely on fate. They just hit you. Automatically, consistently, relentlessly. The only thing you can do is hope that on your turn you have rolled a shield or you have enough health to withstand the incoming damage. And so the two sides trade blows until one of them is defeated. Or should wisdom and cowardice align, you and your team might decide that survival is preferable to honor, cut your losses and run. Because sometimes the best move is not to win the fight, it's not to die in it. Again, let me be clear, this is a simplified version of combat. In reality, fights are far more dynamic, more unpredictable, and occasionally avoidable. Some encounters allow for a stealthy approach, a rare and beautiful opportunity to strike from the shadows before the enemy even knows you exist. You can also choose to listen, much like in the video game, assessing your surroundings and gaining a small tactical edge before committing to a fight. Or if you're particularly cautious or tired of getting punched in the face, you can try to sneak past the enemy entirely. No fight, no risk, no unnecessary heroics. Just slipping by, unnoticed, and continuing on a journey like the intelligent person that values survival over ego. It's an option, a valid option. Of course, should you choose violence, you're given a couple of approaches. Fists, unreliable, brutal, sometimes necessary. Melee weapons, more efficient, slightly less humiliating. And of course, firearms, devastating, if you hit your target. And here's where things get interesting. The gunplay in this game is excellent. Not in the sense of a physical mechanics, after all it's a tabletop game, but in the way it replicates the feeling of firearms in the Last of Us video game. Here's what I mean. A successful shot deals massive damage. The kind of damage that turns the tide of battle instantly. The kind of damage that makes you feel like an action hero. Until, of course, you remember you are dangerously low on supplies and you have been subsisting on canned beans for the past 3 regions or something. But there's always a but. You might miss, you might not have ammo. You might have ammo but not enough to waste on uncertain. And that is a common, deeply unpleasant state of being. But if you do hit, the scale shifts dramatically in your favor. For a moment, you almost think, I've got this. You don't, but it's nice to dream. Beyond combat, there's scavenging. You can search location for supplies, eat food to restore your health. If you are particularly resourceful, you can combine 2 pieces of junk to create something that's almost useful. A few scraps of cloth, an empty can, maybe some tape, and voila! You fashioned yourself a makeshift medkit. Weapons can be upgraded on specific occasions. A simple wooden club with the right materials and a deep respect for duct tape, you can attach a blade to it, turning it instantly into something that removes 2 or 3 dice from the enemy's health pool. A crude but effective solution. Honestly, nearly everything you remember from the video game is here. distilled into a format that is, at its core, simple, stripped down, streamlined. So simple, in fact, that it doesn't even bother with color. And that's wonderful. The special abilities are another delight. Each character has a personal checklist of objectives, tasks they can complete along their way. If they succeed, they unlock a special skill. Not something dramatic, nothing game-breaking, just a small advantage. And this is the philosophy of the entire game, by the way. It's not about one big, overwhelming power. It's about many small ones, collected, stacked, and carefully preserved. One small edge, then another, and another. Until suddenly, without even realizing it, you are one bit more prepared about the final battle than you were in the start of the game. And that's the game. Perfect. Or at least it would be if not for some tiny, small problems. Look, when a game offers a great deal of freedom, you must accept one unspoken rule. Not every possible outcome has been fully accounted for. And so there are moments in The Last of Us Escape the Dark where rules feel fragile, a bit uncertain, occasionally illogical. For example, let's talk about time. You have exactly 16 days to reach Jackson. A reasonable limit, but time is fickle here. Some actions consume entire days for everyone, even if only one member initiated them. You could be off on your own making a single decision while the rest of the team is doing something that in theory should take less time, and yet an entire day is gone. I don't understand it. Then there's the infection calendar, an unsettling little mechanism dictating that on certain days the world just becomes worse. Infected populations increase. Some areas become more dangerous, reaching threat levels that need to be lowered if you want to move forward. And wouldn't you know it, these bad days tend to land exactly when you have the option to leave. It feels like a deliberate roadblock designed to slow you down when you just started to gain momentum. It's not game breaking, it's not, anything to write home about, but it's suspicious. And in the end, after an hour, 2 or 3 of planning, scavenging, fighting, and barely making it to Jacksonville, you might end up losing the final battle in the first round. Just like that. Yes, it would be entirely your fault. Yes, you should have planned better. But still, it's so anticlimactic. Here's the thing. The Last of Us Escape the Dark is a thoughtfully designed game. It understands the world it's adapting. It wants to immerse you in it. But here's the catch. If you're playing with people who've never heard about the world of The Last of Us, who don't know what it is to feel its weight, its melancholy, its quiet devastation, the atmosphere might slip right through your fingers. But it's there. The game offers it, or at the very least it provides you with everything you need to create it for yourself. This is a game of small numbers adding up to something greater. I like that every character has its own personal die, unique to them, shaped by their abilities. I like that Ellie can sneak better than the others, that Joe hits harder. I like it as an idea. In practice, not as noticeable as you'd hope. And that, in a way, defines the entire experience for me. Would this game have reached as many people if it wasn't for the Last of Us team? I don't know. I'm not sure. Although the Emperor Limited did it before with the previous entries in the Escape the Dark series. But it is The Last of Us. And at this moment, there isn't, I think, another as detailed board game adaptation of this world. There will be eventually, but right now, this is it. And The Last of Us Escape the Dark fills this void beautifully. Not perfectly, but well enough. The components, excellent. Thick cardboard, sturdy dice, everything feels solid, well made, durable. The kind of game you can play repeatedly without it showing too much wear. But there are two issues for me worth mentioning. First, the black and white aesthetic. Now, I understand the intention. It's meant to enhance the desperation, to reinforce the bleak atmosphere, to stay true to the signature style of the Escape the Dark games. And it does. It's just that for me personally, it sometimes feel like a visual stumbling block. A little too stark, a little too heavy-handed. You know what I mean? Not a flaw necessarily, just a design choice that I don't entirely love, but I respect it. Which brings me to the second issue, a design choice that I'm not sure I fully respect. And that's the box. It's huge. It's massive. It's far, far bigger than it needs to be. For a game with what seems like a handful of components, the box seems oversized. It kind of feels like opening a big suitcase just to find a pair of socks inside. But again, it's not a big deal. I mean, you just need more place on the shelf. Mechanically speaking, this is not a difficult game. You have a lot of options, certainly, but they are mostly situational. The battles, pretty straightforward. And yet, despite its simplicity, The Last of Us Escape the Dark is not an easy game. Resources are scarce and their value is immense. Your character's health, a steadily dwindling resource. If you don't actively work to maintain it, you will slowly, inevitably, deteriorate. And the final battle, it's not just a fight, it's a wall. Reaching it, not that hard. Reaching it and surviving, a completely different story. This game is for two kinds of people. Those who are familiar with The Last of Us and the Escape the Dark system. Those who enjoy this type of cooperative action survival games, regardless of the theme. Yes, you can play this game without knowing anything about The Last of Us, but you won't be able to fully appreciate the subtle atmosphere that seeps into every detail. And let's be clear, this is not an entry-level game. Not because the mechanics are difficult, but because they are layered, intertwined, deceptively similar to one another. For new players, it will feel confusing rather than immersive. A single game lasts between 1 and 2 hours depending on how many players are involved, whether you stay together or scatter like a dysfunctional apocalypse crew, how quickly you navigate through each location. As for table space, it's surprisingly manageable. With 3 players, we fit comfortably around a small coffee table with room to spare. The main board is large, yes, but most components are placed directly on it, keeping things tidy. Compact, efficient, practical, unlike the box that it comes in. With 3 players, the game runs beautifully. A sweet spot for strategy, teamwork, and enough tension to keep things engaging. With 2 players, it's doable, but you should probably stick together. With 4 or 5 players, however, if everyone decides to go their own way, prepare for a very long game. As for solo play, it's possible and it's actually not bad, but you will need to control 2 characters at once, which is either a fun challenge or existential crisis, depending on your mood. The Last of Us Escape the Dark is a good game. Not perfect, it has its flaws certainly, but it delivers a certain type of experience, and that experience is very true to its theme. And it's currently unmatched in depth by any other The Last of Us board game. Will I play it again? Absolutely. And then again. Because with each playthrough there's the temptation to do it better, to move smarter, to optimize every decision, to use resources more efficiently, to survive more effectively. The game encourages this mindset. And for that alone, I recommend it without any hesitation. If this content made you feel good in any way, please subscribe, share, comment, like. It means a lot to me. Thank you very much. See you next time.